When I was a young person, I spent an unusually large amount of time playing card games. I wonder if you are a cards player or if you remember all of the rules to the various games that you have played throughout your life. I remember growing up playing games like War or Old Maid or Hearts with my siblings. I remember being taught to play solitaire and cribbage by my grandfather. I remember playing slapjack on the bus ride home from school. I remember learning to play a game called canasta from my neighbors. I also remember a family vacation to Canada where there were 4 of us in the back playing whist for the 5 hours to Canada and back. One game in particular we played a lot was called Phase 10. In this particular game, everyone is dealt a number of cards that you would call a hand, and each person is supposed to collect certain cards to complete the round. Now, the cards you're looking for might be different than the person next to you. For example, you might need 3 of one number and 4 of another number, but the person next to you might need 8 cards of one color. The goal is to get your set of cards before anyone else does. And then, of course, in the next round, you have a new certain set of cards to collect. So just so you know what kind of rowdy childhood I had, I remember going to sleepovers at friends' house, and we would decide we were going to stay up all night long. And so the choice of activity was Phase 10. We played cards till 5 in the morning. So I guess I don't know if you are a games player, and that's fine. Not everyone plays cards. But I wanted to give a snapshot of my childhood, in part because I think it's a helpful contrast for what life might have been like for the man in our story. Because let's be honest, the hand that I was dealt in life is a lot easier than his. Because I wonder what life was like for him. So our story talks about the pool of Bethzatha. You may have also heard it called the pool of Bethesda. This is a picture of the actual archaeological dig where we think we have found this pool. It is located just outside of Jerusalem. There were actually 2 pools, each one incredibly deep. So actually at the bottom, it's about 42 feet. For reference, the height of our sanctuary is 55 feet. So we're talking a very, very deep pool. Now, when the scripture says there are 5 porticos, we might call them pool decks or a covered walkway. So you see kind of these walkways that are around the pools. Now, the 2 pools were connected by kind of an aqueduct. So there you can see the 5 porticos, north, south, east, and west, with the 5th in between. There's a pool on one side and a pool on the other. They were connected by kind of an aqueduct, so the water would flow from one to the other. Now, it was thought that the pool had some kind of healing properties, and the water in the pool would sometimes bubble or churn seemingly randomly, and whoever was able to step down into the water first would be healed. So the scene might have looked something like this. Imagine with me. So there are these immense stone walkways surrounding these deep, deep pools known for healing. So surrounding on all of these places are people who are looking to be healed, hoping to step down into the water as it is churning, that they might be made well. Now, the people who are here, in general, have exhausted all of their other options. They're waiting, hoping, praying that this pool might finally give them the relief that they want. Because the people who come to this pool are desperate. This is actually a last resort. There's not a whole lot of evidence that this pool worked. We don't really know what might have stirred up the waters in the pool, perhaps something to do with the water that drained from one pool to the other, or perhaps it was some kind of rumbling under the ground, an earthquake or an underwater geyser or a spring that would randomly stir in the water. We still don't know. The local legend was that an angel would come and stir up the water, but maybe only on special days like festivals or feast days. And then, of course, the most fit and the quickest moving get in first. And then, of course, they are healed because the most fit and quickest moving are the most likely to get well anyway. There's not really a whole lot of evidence that this pool worked. But sometimes, when we are in desperate need of healing, we will lean on anything that will give us hope. So this man is one of those desperate people. We read that he's been ill for 38 years. Think more like debilitating illness, chronic pain, paralyzation, some kind of disease that might be curable, but leaves him unable to function. So this is an individual who's been seeking relief for 38 years. 38 years of some kind of condition he hopes can be cured but hasn't been. 38 years of doctor visits, 38 years of failed treatments, 38 years of not being able to take care of himself. 38 years, long enough that you have no more people around you to help because they've all gotten too tired, old, or weary. Sometimes when we are in desperate need of healing, we will lean on anything that will give us hope, even a pool of randomly bubbling water that may or may not work. So perhaps how fitting then that Jesus goes to the man who perhaps has been waiting the longest to be made well. And then I wonder at the audacity of Jesus' question, do you want to be made well? Well, obviously, that's why he's at the pool. And the man answers Jesus' question in that way. Do I want to be made well? Of course. But I can't move and I don't have anyone to help me when the healing comes. What do you want me to do? How often are our own responses like that? Jesus asks us if we want to be made well, and yet we often get stuck looking at all of the things that keep us from where we want to be. And then Jesus' answer, stand up, take up your mat, walk, and the man is instantly healed. I wonder what these scenes are like. What about all of the other people lying there who also want to be healed? Was this man in some way crippled or deformed and suddenly just stands up straight and he isn't? Does he continue to argue with Jesus, disbelieving that it could be true? Does anyone else get healed that day? And then perhaps a question that's closer to home, do healings like this still happen? I have met a small handful of people who have gone from totally ill to totally healed with nothing more than a prayer and laying on of hands, but those are very few and far between. For most of us, it looks different. Sometimes physical healing comes from the hands of nurses and doctors, surgeries, and other hospital technology. Sometimes emotional healing comes by time or medicine or mental health counseling. Sometimes our own mental healing comes through meditation or time in nature, or yes, medicine or therapy. Sometimes healing comes through prevention. Think about the good work of vaccines or diagnostic tests or other routine visits to the doctor. And then, of course, sometimes healing just simply doesn't come in a way that we expect or hope. And so rather, healing doesn't look like wholeness. Rather, it looks like having the tools to cope with a situation that simply won't go away. Now, I think what I like best about this story is that healing comes to the man regardless of the man's ability to heal himself, regardless of his desire to be made well, and without his even asking. Jesus sees him, Jesus chooses him, Jesus heals him. And the same is true for us. Jesus sees us, chooses us, and heals us. Now, all of this brings me back to playing cards. Because let's be honest, if we're playing the game of life, we are all dealt a slightly different hand. Who our parents are, where we're born, if our family had money or not, our various abilities or inabilities. Sometimes we draw a card that we don't like. Sometimes we keep a card that we really shouldn't keep. Sometimes we get rid of a card that we should have kept. Sometimes we'd have made a different choice had we known what was coming. And then, of course, sometimes, like the man in our story, sometimes our hand is simply really difficult to play. Whether we put the card there ourselves, whether we drew it from life along the way, or it was dealt to us in the beginning, sometimes we have just a terrible hand, and try as we might, there's just no easy way forward. It's funny how sometimes the most formative experiences of our lives are the things we like the least: a death, divorce, a new diagnosis, a mental illness. Life sometimes makes us desperate, running to anything that will give us hope. And so when Jesus asks, do you want to be made well? We cry, of course, but it's not possible. Don't you see the cards in my hand? Thankfully, where we see limitation, Jesus sees possibility. And when we tend to hold on to disbelief, frustration, or despair, Jesus offers hope, health, and healing. It's Matthew 19:26 that reminds us, for us it may be impossible, but anything is possible with God. And so he says, take up your mat and walk, because Jesus' healing power is in the world all around us. Jesus may not walk up to us in a pool in Israel, but perhaps Jesus meets us in the nurse who greets us at the hospital, or the counselor who listens to our story. Maybe Jesus is in the friends we make in a group that we find at church, or maybe the answers come through reading or meditation or friends. My prayer is always that Jesus shows up in ways we cannot miss, whether with an answer, a resource, or simply in presence in the midst of the unthinkable. When we are desperate, we will cling to anything that gives us hope. So thank goodness that Jesus is a deep pool of hope, one we can throw ourselves into whenever we are in need of a healing touch. Because the truth is, in the game of life, there are cards we can change. We can swap out denial for acceptance. We can add helpful things to our hand, like medication or therapy, doctoring, or a stronger community. All easier said than done, of course, but it is possible. And then, yes, there are certain cards that we simply can't get rid of. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, we can't discard the one that says cancer or chronic pain or addiction or other certain diagnoses or grief. But we can put other cards in our hand that might make those easier to manage. And so I ask you to hear those words. Do you want to be made well? You can lay by the pool of healing as long as you need. And then, yes, stand up, take up your mat, and walk with Jesus by your side. Now, before I close, I want to think about, for a second, those moments in life when, if I can use the card metaphor, when our hands feel okay. Maybe there are too many cards, but hardship is not in play. One of the key ways that Jesus heals is through others, and I think we are called to be that other. Part of our work as Christians is helping other people create better lives for themselves. Because let's be honest, when anyone is asked the question, do you want to be made well? The answer is yes. But some people have more resources available to them than others. So what does it mean as Christians to walk alongside people who have more difficulties than we do? Jesus is absolutely a healer, but Jesus does his healing work through us. So the next time you think about this passage and you hear Jesus ask this question, do you want to be made well? I want you to remember, Jesus already knows the cards in your hand, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Jesus is offering encouragement to change the things you can, the comfort to accept the things that you cannot change. And Jesus reminds us of the healing that comes in the community all around us. And so yes, others may have difficulties in their lives too. So what does it look like for you as a Christian to help them pick up their mat and carry it home?